everyone, I'm Sarah Martin, the Director of Economic Research at Dodge Construction Network. I'm here today to review the May starts report. As a reminder, here at Dodge, we track projects from their earliest stages of planning all the way through to when they break ground, and once they've broken ground, we classify that project as a construction start. We put the full value and square footage of that project into the month that it broke ground. So in the month of May, we saw some pretty strong growth. Overall construction starts were up 34%, certainly driven by the nearly 92% growth we saw on the non-building side and the 17.8% that we saw on the non-residential building side. Residential building, on the other hand, continues to decelerate. It fell back about 2.1%. We're seeing pretty similar trends when we look at the overall 12-month moving totals. Overall construction is up about 12.5%. Non-res is up 11.7% and non-building up 33.2%. But residential building is continuing to face that weakness, down about 4.6% over the last 12 months. Now, digging into those trends a little bit more, certainly the story of sort of May was that, about 20 or so projects entered START that were valued over $1 billion. And those massive sort of mega projects propped up growth in a handful of sectors and really drove that 34% strength that we saw over the month. But in several other sectors, we saw a lot of normalizing or kind of decelerating from the growth that they saw in April. So, for example, offices and data centers were up 20% this month, thanks to several multi-billion-dollar data center projects breaking ground. On the manufacturing side, we saw the $5 billion Rivian electric vehicle plant break ground and support the 116% growth that we saw over the month. And on the healthcare side, we also saw a handful of multi-billion-dollar hospitals breaking ground that drove that sector up about 139%. Very similarly, on the non-building side, a $4 billion highway project and $4 billion bridge project drove the 111% growth. And then finally, on the utility side, the $13.5 billion LNG facility that broke ground supported the 196% growth in utilities. So really, a handful of projects drove that month-over-month strength, whereas you can see most other sectors are declining. So on the commercial side, certainly sectors that had a really strong April, like parking garages, that fell back about 54%, normalizing to more historically typical levels there. Similar story to warehouses, which was down 17%. But hotels had a pretty weak month, down 37%, and retail stores pulled back about 6%. On the institutional side, education decelerated about 15%, also sort of normalizing after a really strong April. And you can see for most of those institutional sectors, even with the growth we saw in healthcare this month, they're still facing a lot of year-to-date weakness, down 9% overall. And on the residential building side, we continue to see, a deceleration on the single family side. That sector is down 9% over the first 5 months of the year, which is a little worrisome given the fact that, it was a relatively weak year for single family housing in 2025, and it's, now trending weaker than that. On the multifamily side, that sector remains up 4% year to date, but it did have a pretty weak May, down about 4% overall, and has been decelerating over the last couple of months. We did expect to see some slowdown in multifamily in the back half of the year, so it's largely trending where we expected it to go. And again, the sector is still, I think, positive overall for the year so far. So again, we continue to sort of see this dynamic where mega projects are creating these bursts of activity in 1 month, but some of that underlying demand, especially for sectors like warehouses or our institutional categories or residential building, are seeing more sustained sort of weakness that's sort of eating away at some of that activity. All right, that's all I have for you this month. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.